Hi, I'm Peter Miller. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and my new film, Sacco and Vanzetti, is going to be in theaters this spring. You're watching The barryz Show.
Hi, it's barryz from The barryz Show, talking to filmmaker Peter Miller, who has a fantastic new documentary out called Sacco and Vanzetti. And it's about what?
It's about two Italian immigrant anarchists who were executed in 1927, but it's really about immigrants and justice and ethnicity in America.
Hi, it's barryz from The barryz Show, talking to filmmaker Peter Miller, who has a great new documentary out called Sacco and Vanzetti. Right, Peter?
That's right.
Tell us what it's about.
It's a film about two human beings. First of all, it's about two men, two people who went through an extraordinarily difficult experience and ultimately were executed for a crime that many people believe they didn't commit.
What was the crime?
They were accused of murder and robbery at a shoe factory in Massachusetts.
The crime took place on the afternoon of April 15th, 1920, as the paymaster of the Slater Morrill factory, Frederick Parmenter, and a guard, Alessandro Baradelli, were carrying the Slater and Morrill payroll, amounting to over $10,000. From the main office down to the factory where the men were going to be paid off. As they walked down the street, two men were waiting by a post and rail fence. Both men were shot. Parmenter managed to run across the street, but he fell there. The bandits picked up the money, the bandits jumped into the car, and the car drove off at a high rate of speed.
What kind of evidence did the police have?
Well, they're carrying loaded pistols. They're carrying guns. They look suspicious. They look nervous. Now, why are they nervous? They're anarchists. We're in the middle of a roundup of radicals, and these guys are worried. They're worried because all sorts of bad stuff has been happening. People are being deported. One of their comrades is either pushed or jumps out of a window a week earlier in New York. All sorts of bad stuff is happening. So when they're picked up by the cops, knowing that they're radicals, knowing that they're revolutionaries, they lie to the police. Now, once you lie to the police, people assume that you're a dishonest, disreputable person who could have committed this murder, and they pin this murder on them.
The bulk of the trial was taken up with eyewitnesses. The direct and cross-examination of eyewitnesses on both sides who did or did not place Sacco and Vanzetti in this crime. In the case of Vanzetti, there was something drastically wrong with every single identification. The ID witness of Vanzetti closest to the crime scene, the gate tender who raised the gate for the bandit car to get out of South Braintree, claimed that he saw Vanzetti driving the car, where it is clear that Vanzetti never knew how to drive a car.
And when they're tried, of course the jury is all Anglo-Saxon, and when you bring two people who don't speak much English, they come from Italy, they're anarchists, they didn't serve in World War I, there's flags waving everywhere because there's this huge patriotic fervor, they can't get a fair trial. And the trial that Sacco and Vanzetti get is really a travesty of justice.
He says goodbye to his family, he shouts "Long live anarchy," and then just as the electricity is applied, he says "Farewell, mother." And then Vanzetti is the last to go. He walks into the death chamber, he shakes the warden's hand and thanks him for all that he's done for him. This is an act of composure that is apparently very moving to people who are witnessing the execution.
Vanzetti made a statement in which he declared that he was innocent of all crimes, that he had done some sins, but no crime. And in his last words, as the hood was being put over him before he was electrocuted, he is reported to have said, "I now want to forgive some of these people for what they are doing to me.
1927. It was a hot summer night in 1927. It was hot in Boston. It was hotter in New York, I think. We were trying to watch the electricity because we were told that the force of the electricity going through the electric chair would in some way diminish the power of the lights. And so I think we were looking for that.
Each of them immigrated from Italy to the United States in 1908. They didn't know each other when they came over here. They came from completely different parts of the country. Vanzetti came from the far north.
Vanzetti came from healthy peasant stock. His father was a fairly prosperous farmer, but unfortunately he had no vision of his son becoming anything in life, and therefore at age 13 apprenticed him as a baker's apprentice. So for the next 6 years in Italy, he led a wretched existence, working as much as 18 hours a day in these bakeries where he worked mainly at night. It was a terrible existence. His only solace was reading books.
Sacco came from the far south of Italy.
Sacco came from a small town in the region of Puglia called Torremaggiore. Puglia is the heel of Italy. Unlike the vast majority of Italian immigrants who came here for reasons of poverty, he came from a fairly prosperous peasant family. His father owned a large vineyard. He had an olive oil business. As a kid, he liked to tinker with machines. He was never much of a scholar. Had a very happy childhood.
How did they meet?
Well, after a while in America, they both recognized that the way in which working people and immigrants were treated here was just so atrocious, that the poverty here, that the exploitation of working people was just appalling, that they both became drawn to radical movements to try to fundamentally change the way society worked so that people could get a fair shake.
Some people think anarchists are just wild-eyed, crazy bomb throwers. But most anarchists are not bomb throwers. Most anarchists have a kind of philosophy about what society should be like. And Sacco and Vanzetti subscribe to this philosophy. They believe that the economic resources of society should be collectively owned and distributed in an equitable way so that everybody could have a job and everybody could have all the necessities of life. They were opposed to government, to the state. They felt that the state was oppressive. They felt that the state was on the side of the rich.
To me, what happened in this case says so much about America. It says so much about who we are as Americans, about how we deal with immigrants, how we deal with justice, how in a time of fear, justice can be compromised.
One of the reasons that the case has lasting meaning is because it speaks to issues that remain alive today.
The Department of Justice is waging a deliberate campaign of arrest and detention to protect American lives.
Critics still say the Department of Justice is casting too wide a net, trampling on civil liberties to ensure safety.
Unfortunately, in the American justice system, who you are and what you believe has enormous importance, especially during periods of perceived crisis or real crisis. This is a nation that's often poised to overreact. It's tragic, but it's true. Who you are matters in this country in terms of what sort of justice you'll receive.
How did you get introduced to the story of Sacco and Vanzetti?
You know, I've been working on historical documentaries for a long time, and my passion really is the story of American radical movements. The last film I did before this one was called The Internationale. It was a story of the song of socialism and communism, and through people's stories of this song, we learn about this movement that really defined the 20th century.
I saw action as an infantryman and was wounded in the course of it, and as a result of being wounded, wound up in a hospital at Matabaro. In the hospital, what we did for entertainment, of course, was have entertainers come out and sing, and a couple do flamencos and things like that. One day when they ran out of entertainers and we had to fall back on our own resources, the chief of entertainment called on us all to come up on the stage one at a time and sing the International in whatever language was our own language. And well over 40 languages were represented on the stage. Each one would sing a few words in their own language and then go on to the next one, or we would have been there all night. And then finally everybody sang the song together in their own languages, so that we heard it sung in in Javanese, and we heard it sung in Tamil, and we heard it sung in Hindi, in English, in French, in German, in Russian, in Spanish, in every which language you could think of, and more, and many, many more. It was sung in Yiddish as well. Steht auf für alle, wer wie Sklaven. Arise, you, those of you who were slaves.
En la internacional.